explore a world through our senses. Okay, we know that we have five senses, and we so through those five senses we explore. We learn about. We are aware of this world, and we start learning from these sensations. Apart from these senses, there are three more senses. One is proprioception, vestibular, and another is interoception. So proprioception is your awareness of body in a space. Okay, so which is basically your muscles and joints. It's present in your muscles and joints. And your vestibular is your sense of balance and movement, which direct your movement with respect to the gravity of the earth. And next is the interoceptors. These are the receptors which are present inside the. These are present inside. So interoceptors are the receptors that are present inside your organs, and they give the information about your body temperature, your changes in the hormonal level, all the internal factors. Okay, so these are the 8 senses that work in coordination to make a balance. Okay, which enables them in the regulation of their everyday life. Your sensation is your input. For example, we learn everything through our sensation. So whatever we are today is your the input from your sensation. So sensory inputs not only from your sensation, but also from your environment, from from your bodily factors that might include your IQ, that might include all your body factors, and also your psychosocial factors. So that all the sensation that is coming from your environment, everything is your input. Then your brain goes into processing, which is called as information processing or the sensory processing, and from that we have an output. Okay, the output can be your emotions, it can be your behaviors, it can be your feelings, or it can be your thought. So primarily it is a sensation which is the fundamental in processing, and that is enabling you to learn everything. So sensation is your input method through which you get all the output, your everyday activities, your emotions, everything is from the sensation it is coming out. So what happens is there is a processing that happens inside your brain. So all the sensations are they automatically they gather information from your from your skin, muscles, joints, eyes, nose, everything, and your brain kind of organizes these inputs and it gives into a meaningful information. So what happens is, even for a simple thing, even for a simple activity, we need to have a lot of input from all the sensations, from all the 7 or 8 sensations, so which gives an output from there. So from the sensation we start learning. From you can see in this pyramid that your sensation is the base, okay, so on which all your learning is happening. You can see from the basic senses, your tactile, vestibular and proprioception, these are called as power senses. So from this sensation, along with your your five major sensory organ senses, they together form into a development for sensory motor development. From there it goes for your perceptual, and from there as it starts integrating, it goes for a cognitive development. Finally it gives a byproduct of your intellect or your academic abilities. So you can see the importance of sensation here. Your sensory input is the firm foundation for your future learning or for your all your future capabilities. So, so this is just to reiterate the importance of the sensation. So your sensation, the proper proper channeling of your sensation, it enables you to participate in future activities in academics or in sports or in all your capacities. So this process of sensory processing is called as sensory integration. This was first given by Dr. Jean Ayers. She's an occupational therapist with major advanced training in neuroscience and educational psychology. She said that it is a normal phenomenon. It is not some abnormal thing. It is there in within you, within me. It is everyday phenomenon that is happening with all of us. So what happens is, but we have an innate ability to modulate our input of our senses. Say for example, if you are bored, we are able to rock ourselves and we can regulate our behavior. For example, if there is some you are very tired or you are unable to focus in a meeting or something, we can just have a small stretch and we regulate ourselves according to the environment. We see if it is appropriate and we regulate ourselves and we manage our sensory processing of the information which is appropriate to the social situations. So which is what I'm trying to tell you here is, sensory integration is a normal process that happens between all the all the human beings. But what is abnormal, when it becomes abnormal, is that some people can't okay, some people can't some people cannot integrate these kind of information because of some abnormal brain processes or because of some conditions. So they are unable to regulate their emotions or the behavior or their feelings or whatever the output that is needed from the sensory integration. So okay, so the abnormality of this, if there is abnormality in the sensory integration, then it leads to something called sensory integration disorder or the sensory processing. It is the same. So sensory processing disorders are have been classified into three types. Okay, yeah. So sensory processing disorder is nothing but your body's inability. Your body is unable to take in the information, your sensory information, and it is unable to use it appropriately or efficiently as the situation requires. So that is called as sensory processing disorder. So there are three types in that. One is sensory modulation disorder, sensory based motor disorder, and sensory discrimination disorder. So sensory modulation disorder is where you have a problem turning your sensory messages into into a controlled behavior. So you are unable to match your sensory input to your behavior. Next is sensory motor disorder, sensory based motor disorder, where there is a problem with stabilizing, moving, or maybe planning a motor act. Okay, so they have a problem in planning a motor act and all those things. So next is sensory discrimination disorder, where they have difficulty with finding out the similarities and differences between the senses. So these are the broad classification about the sensory processing disorder. So you can see here, so sensory modulation disorder is again into three types: sensory over responsivity, sensory under responsivity, and sensory seeking or craving. So sensory based motor disorder is includes dyspraxia and postural disorder, and sensory discrimination disorder comes across all the senses like visual, auditory, tactile, vestibular, proprioceptive, taste, which is your olfactory. So all these are the classification for the sensory processing disorder. Sensory diet, many at times the problem comes when the child is unable to sensory, they are unable to modulate their senses. So what happens is they're either overly aroused, or they're underly aroused, or they're going for sensory seeking. So sensory modulation is an ability which is enabling them to adapt the sensory information from their body and from the environment. So it helps to take in a new or relevant information. It allows them to filter out the irrelevant information, and it prioritizes their focus, like what they want to do at that point of time, what is the work in hand. So they're able to prioritize that focus and attention, and they're able to adapt to the change in the environment, and the main thing is to regulate their arousal levels. So these are all the main functions that the sensory modulation is doing. So for that to happen, for the modulation to happen, they need alerting, calming and organizing activities so that they can regulate their behaviors. Okay, so when a child is unable to regulate their sensation, or they are unable to modulate, what happens is the child can go into fight or flight response, which can trigger a kind of a stress, a kind of a loop. Okay, so the child has to, he goes into anxiety mode, where the child feels an extreme anxiety and stress. So because of this response, there is dilatation of pupil, dry mouth, there is heart, fast beating of heart, and fast breathing, and all the blood is pumped to the muscles and the joints, so that he can either fight the abnormal sensation or to flight from that situation. So it creates a kind of anxiety and a stress kind of a situation for a child if there is a abnormal sensory modulation. So like I said, sensory modulation is of three types, like sensory over responsivity, sensory under responsivity, and sensory seeking. So sensory over responsivity is nothing but your quick or intense response to sensory stimuli. So they immediately respond to any kind of sensation. Next is sensory under responsivity. These children, they do not respond adequately to appropriately with the sensation that has been presented to them. So they need lot of sensation to elicit some kind of a response in them. So you have to keep on giving lot of sensation, so we can have something, some kind of productive behavior, or some kind of productive reaction from them. So only then they can calm, or they can become focused. Okay, so next is the sensory seeking. Here is they go into a more seeking of those sensations, which is unacceptable manner. They are very active in seeking all those sensations. So these children have difficulty in modulating and organizing the sensory input, and they have difficulty with self-regulation. They are they are unable to regulate their arousal states, and also their difficulty in interacting with others. They are unable to interact with others, and finally they have difficulty in adapting to any new change or any new situations. So these are some of the difficulties these kind of children will have. So just a graphical representation here. Low arousal child, like I said, they need lot of sensory input. Okay, so they're very passive, they don't participate, they're very dull, they don't want to do anything. So you really have to put lot of sensation to get some kind of a response in them. So Yeah, so many at times they don't want to engage, they don't want to try out anything new, so they're just passive and waiting for something, a massive response to come. So next is the high arousal child. Yeah, overly aroused child or the high aroused child, it is the other end where even a small sensation can trigger a very anxiety provoking, or they become very overly acting to those sensation. So they are very sensitive to noise, touch, movement, and they have very difficulty in change of any transition. So for example, if they're traveling or if they're going and participating in any social situations, or and also they become very upset even for small things. They're unable to process those information, so they become very upset at those things. And also they have a lot of emotional breakdowns because they're unable to control those emotions, those sensations. So they become emotionally upset, and also they try to avoid, the main thing is they try to avoid those kind of situations or those kind of sensations that are needed. So next is the sensory seeking child. These are okay, so these seekers, or we say sensory craving, so these are more, they need more number of more amount of sensory input to, they go for them, they are seeking a large amount of sensation. So they're unable, they don't have a satiation, so which means like they can't satisfy with the normal amount of sensory input. So they keep on going and finding amount of sensation, which can be very dangerous. Sometimes these seeking of sensation can lead them to some dangerous situations, or they can go and in abnormal environments. They can keep exploring in an abnormal environments and all that, so that poses a danger to them. So this is poor sensory modulation. It tips the balance. Okay, it doesn't give them a balance in integrating or the processing of their information. So for example, if it is for example, if it is a low arousal child, he needs a lot of information to do some to do some activity. At the other end is the high arousal child. Even with a minimal amount of sensation, it can trigger anxiety or a stress, and he avoids participating in those kind of activities. So basically modulation is nothing but your sense of balance with all your sensation. So now coming on to the sensory diet. So now we coming on to the sensory diet. So like how for our body we need nutritional diet, we also need a sensory diet. For example, if you are hungry and we are unable to organize ourselves, we eat food to maintain a balance in our body. So we take a nutritional diet so that we can perform, to maintain our body's health and all that. So same way for our sensory processing and for our everyday functioning, we need a sensory diet. So like how we have 3 meals and 3 snacks every day, these children who have poor modulation, they also need these kind of structured program where we can give appropriate sensory information so they can organize their emotions or their behaviors. So what is the sensory diet? So sensory diet is nothing but a planned program which is which aims at the child, and it is a planned program where we combine a lot of sensory activities in, and we incorporate them into a daily life skills. Okay, so we incorporate those activities in their daily schedule. So sensory diet. So sensory diet is your planned program. So every day, for example, if a child is abnormal in processing the information, we plan their day. For example, every day some 3 set of activities, and we incorporate in their daily schedule. So we can see here, sensory diet was first coined, the term was first coined by an occupational therapist, Patricia Wilberger. She was the first person to coin this term. So it is a individual structured activity plan, they can do every day, so that we can fulfill the child's sensory needs. Okay, so this is a carefully planned program. It is not, something like a mismatch. We match because they have some problem, we do something. No, it is not like that. It is a planned program that caters to particularly to each child, and so it is very unique plan. It is not a common plan. We can't do the same thing to everybody. We have to just analyze the child, and we have to do it to each child. It is a very personalized daily schedule. So these sensory diet activities are the main focus is to maintain their sensory processing. Okay, so that it keeps their nervous system very calm and focused, and they're able to process the information, and they're able to focus on their activity or the learning or the development that is happening to them. So for example, we can provide, there are, like I said, there are 3 types of activities we can give. One is alerting activities, one is calming activities, other thing is organizing activities. So calming activities are given to children when they are overly aroused, and alerting activities are given to child when it is underly aroused, and organizing activity is when the child has an emotional breakdown or they're having some anxiety or a trauma. We can give those organizing activities, and we can combine organizing activities for all these children also. So as a child, so this happens, see, these things should be given when the child is in the developmental stages. As the child grows and as it matures, it is able to regulate by himself. They don't need any external help. As they grow, they can understand, and they can regulate in an appropriate manner which is acceptable in the society. So okay, so to regulate, we need to give a lot of short sensory breaks. So because from these sensory breaks, they are able to regulate and they can perform. Okay, for to regulate, we need to have a balanced sensory diet activities. So to okay, so to have a balance, we should understand something called just right. Okay, so this just right challenge is very important. When we are planning for the activity, the amount of activity should be just adequate for the child. Okay, so for example, if the child is very lethargic, or they have a very minimal physical activity, or they are very difficult to wake, these are low arousal children. And the other end is like, very hyper, very all the time on the go, and they are unable to shut down. They are always on the go and all the move. So these they are and also very avoiding the situations and all that. So these are the both ends. So we have to have a balance. Okay, so we need to identify a just right activities, so which is the very core of this sensory diet plan program. Okay, so we have to first identify what are the what are their problem, like whether they are in low arousal or the high arousal, and we have to see we have to go for a just right amount of activities. So if they are just right, they can focus, they can they can modulate their behavior, they can modulate their emotions. So that is the indication that the child is performing in a Just Right challenge. So that is another factor. So we need to, before moving on to that, we need to understand something called power senses. The power senses are your vestibular, proprioception and tactile sensation. So these sensations are basically your movement and balance sensation, and proprioception is your joint and muscle sensation. Tactile is your touch sensation. Here we mean as a deep touch. Okay, so this gives a calming or organizing capacity to your nervous system. So because of this, they are able to control and calm down immediately. So when we handle when we are designing a program, a sensory diet program, we should mainly focus on the power senses. Okay, so like I said, vestibular sense system, it is vestibular system. It is present in the inner ear. It informs the brain about the head position, movement, and the gravity. So it is a very it influences your balance, your muscle tone and coordination. It is fully developed when the child is born, and the input, whatever sensory input that we are giving, it lasts for 3 to 6 hours, and there is also a direct connection to language center to the brain, and it has a very powerful influence on the arousal level. So we should be very careful that we should not overload this sensation. So the vestibular input that can be very alerting, we can give it like fast arrhythmical and rotatory movements. So basically like when you are rotating in a merry-go-round, or when you are arrhythmic without any fast, if you are moving, or if you are doing fast, then it goes into a alerting movements. Where if it is a very slow and rhythmical movement, it gives you a very calming effect. So these are some of the vestibular tools and equipments that we use to process a vestibular sensation. Yeah. Next is your proprioceptive system. So these are the sensory information that we receive from our muscles and joints. So it informs our position of the body parts, and the amount of force that is being that is needed to perform some activity, or that is needed to do the activities. So it is. So sensory system is this proprioception is most of the time is very, very calming, and the input lasts for about 90 minutes. So it regulates and it organizes all other senses and nervous system. So it is very safe sensory support. So that is why we always start with the proprioceptive input. Okay, so most of the time it is very calming and very organizing, and it is also very safe. There isn't any, like in vestibular, we have a overload, but whereas in a proprioceptive we don't have that overload in a like in vestibular. So it is always very safe to start with proprioceptive activities. So some of the activities include your trampoline jumping,